Hi everyone. As the meeting started, we don't have any sound, so
Hey, Brandon, we're, I think just waiting for one person.
okay, cool. I just want to make sure that I saw people talking and make sure that we were ready. So thanks.
Yeah, so we'll likely be postponing it to 5:30 this Wednesday. So all your comment, if you decide to make it tonight, will of course go into the record and will be in front of the PCDC. But there will also be another opportunity on Wednesday as well.
I hate to do later than 5 minutes. Should we just go ahead and start and you guys are okay with that? Okay. And if our new member shows up, we can always swear them in later, I think. Okay. Before we do roll call, and officially call the meeting to start, we have 3 items for public hearing. So our public hearing, general business portion of the meeting will be at the front at the beginning, and then we'll officially adjourn that. And at the end, we have some workshop items that are on the agenda. Looks like the dark skies conversation. So if we have time to get to that, we'll do that. And if not, unless there's urgency to that,
No, this is just the comp plan goal.
okay, cool. So the first 3 items on the agenda that we'll get to in a second are all public hearings, and they're all going to be recommended that we, what's the term I'm looking for? We continue those until Wednesday at 5:30. So we're gonna go through them one at a time with a staff report, opportunity for public comment, if you guys want to make comment. And then we will motion as a PCDC, most likely to continue that until the 14th at 5:30. I just want to give everyone a heads up, that's going to happen 3 times, so it's going to feel a little sluggish.
Okay,
And then-
so, but by the way, it's Wednesday at 5:30 that we're doing, yeah, I wasn't sure we had decided, okay.
So that'll be proposed.
Yeah.
Sorry, everything will be repeated on Wednesday.
Yeah, if you don't, if that's news, that's
Peace out then.
Okay.
totally fine. And we haven't started yet, so it's no big deal. You guys are welcome to stick around. You're welcome to come back on Wednesday. It's kind of unfortunate, but I think there was new information released kind of at the last minute, so we are obliged to do it again at
Gotcha.
a date that's been posted.
Makes sense.
Okay. We can go ahead and do a roll call, Maria, if you don't mind.
Chair Evers,
Present.
Vice Chair Schwartz, Commissioner Dragstaff,
Present.
Commissioner Scott,
Present.
and Commissioner Knapp.
If there is audience business related to the public hearings that are on the agenda, we have comment time for that coming up. If there's any other audience business, either on Zoom or in person, not unrelated to those, you're welcome to bring that to the table now. Doesn't seem like it. Okay. Next item is approval of minutes from June 24th, 2024. Assuming we've all reviewed those, I'll entertain a motion to approve or deny.
I'll move to approve the minutes of June 23rd, 2024.
Okay, so move to have a second. Move in a second. Is there any discussion around that, or we can go to a vote probably? Okay.
Oops, sorry.
Okay. All right, we passed unanimously. A little unbuttoned. We will push swearing in new commissioner member, assuming Julie shows up. We'll do that later after the business. So we'll move into the public hearings. First up is 5.1. I'll let Planner Bowen, you can introduce it, give your report, and thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Let me just pull everything up. Just a second. All right,
Maybe
so.
Andrew, do you want me to give kind of an overview too of what all the issues, I guess, why we're
Sure, go ahead.
recommending? So for those who don't know me, I'm the town attorney, Brandon Dittman, and I was asked to be here tonight to explain, why we're going to be recommending continuing all these. And there's a couple different things going on here that the PCDC should be aware of. The first is that late last week, myself and staff had a discussion concerning 6250, the municipal code, which requires that any annexed property where zoning has been proposed by the applicant, that the decision on zoning happened at the same meeting in which the annexation ordinance is scheduled for the decision by the board. And so based on that requirement, we had a calendar problem in terms of getting the second reading for the board on the same night as the zoning was being determined. So we had already noticed a month ago now on the public hearing for for the annexation itself on August 19th, which meant we need to get the zoning resolution in front of the PCDC, today. It was the original plan. And so, I worked very quickly to put together PCDC's resolutions on the zoning. And then unfortunately, due to miscommunications and scheduling, those did not get uploaded 24 hours in advance. As you guys know, any official action taken by any town board or commission requires 24 hours notice in advance. And it's because we didn't have those public hearings properly noticed. We felt, it was the right thing to do legally to, recommend that these be continued until that proper notice was given. Again, the reason why kind of the fire drill that has to be done this week is because the board's public hearing on the annexation is scheduled for the 19th. And so the PCDs needs to make a recommendation this week. So that way it can be part of the board's, record when we start the public hearing and continue that one next week. So that's a very broad overview of kind of what's going on. Happy to answer any questions on process before we get into the actual substance of the applications.
Questions for Attorney Denham? No, thank you for the explanation.
Of course, thank you.
And Brandon, are you okay with me just giving a light presentation of kind of okay, all right, that sounds good. All right, so first on the list, let me make sure, is the zoning destination of 4545 Butte Highway. So for the record, this case is collectively called and will be presented to you all as the Tebow annexation petition and zoning designation. The project, there are two parcels being petitioned to be annexed as well as established zoning on. The first of which this public hearing is for is 4545 Butte Highway. It's currently, I'll bring it up. It's currently this parcel right here. It's been used as commercial and has some residential uses also in it right now, to my knowledge. And the proposed zoning designation for 4545 is CEC. The annexation and the zoning of these parcels live within our Lions Thrive plan and have been a part of our long-range planning discussion, the town's long-range discussion for quite some time. So Tebow has purchased this property and have requested an annexation. And again, would like to have CEC in the front within the staff report, which I will go over in more detail. The continued date, it's consistent with our planning and is consistent with the neighborhood. But again, I'll go over those criteria much more directly at our next meeting. I want the applicant to also be here as well to hear the staff report and any other individuals that would like to be in the crowd or have input on this case. So with that, I'll turn it over to you all for questions.
Yeah, and our questions now would be more appropriate around anything structural about what we're doing, any specific questions about the property itself. Again, we're going to repeat the presentation on Wednesday, most likely, so we should save those. But any questions for Andrew?
Can you just confirm it's currently zoned CEC and ag?
It's currently zoned, so as you all remember, 2 months ago, Boulder County rezoned or downzoned all parcels within mainly kind of within our 3 mile area to ag. So currently this property is zoned agricultural. So right now, if the applicant wanted to do anything within the county, it kind of forces them to come in to annex into the town of Lyons, because Boulder County just how their land development code is set up. They're not really set up for kind of urbanization of parcels, so they don't speak to stormwater, to sidewalks, to to kind of those more urban services. So that was the benefit of kind of that rezoning, was it puts the ball in the town's court, since our code does speak to those regulations.
Just to follow up on that. So a couple of years ago, when this annexation was under review, what was the zoning then?
It would have been a Boulder County commercial business, I believe, but I can confirm that.
I can confirm that the front property is Boulder County Commercial and the back property is Boulder County Agricultural.
That's their current zoning.
That's
They're all-
correct. Under the county zoning, I mean, ours, we have a different zoning classification system in Lyons.
You know, prior to the rezoning by the county, what were they before that? Or was that this, did they?
I'm pretty sure it's the same for,
Yes, it's there, okay, it is the same,
Yeah.
okay, great,
It's the same, and if I may, because I was at those county hearings,
yeah.
if that's okay.
Go ahead.
So the zoning remains in place unless and until a property owner wishes to change the use or
Okay,
expand.
okay.
So, you know, as soon as a property owner says, hey, I wanna not have a used car bonsai store here, I wanna have a restaurant, then it's automatically zoned to agriculture.
I see, oh, okay, so that's how.
Yeah.
There we go, thank you.
Any other questions for staff about our light report? Okay, with that in mind, we will open it for public comment. Again, you'll have an opportunity on Wednesday with a more robust, staff presentation and an applicant presentation if you want to save it, but you're also welcome to approach the podium and give public comment if you'd like at this time. Anyone online like to jump in? Okay, and if you have any questions about what I'm asking right now too, that's totally
Well, I
fine.
guess, you said 45, but does this also apply to 4559?
Yeah, so there's two properties. The first one we're doing is just the front commercial strip along the highway, and the
Yeah.
next public hearing that we'll have to go through here in a second is the property behind it.
Okay, because on the posted note, it said, we are 4549, which is the furthest to the east.
Brandon, if you want to jump in on kind of the naming of that property.
so the front property is a little unique in that it was previously multiple properties. And so they're all addressed differently for postal reasons. And so there's multiple addresses for postal purposes for that front commercial section where we have those commercial businesses. The back is all one property. And what happened over time is that those properties were combined into one property. And so the county has, for legal recording reasons, one address, which is that 4545, or whatever that number is, with the 45 in it, Ute Highway. So hopefully that provides a bit of an explanation.
That makes sense.
And just for the record, your name and address, please.
Oh, Stuart Hughes and business address or home address?
Home addresses.
816 Gay Street, Roland.
Cool. Any other questions for staff at this time? Or, I'm sorry, any other public comment at this time?
I just want to ask the question,
So, sir, you have to state your name and address for the record.
Jordan Hammerly, 3509 Nyland Way, Lafayette. What does changing the zoning or annexing the property, how does that affect people who are operating in the property currently?
This is tricky because it's a public comment, which is usually a chance for public to kind of give their opinion on something or to address the board, things that maybe we haven't considered. It doesn't really operate as a Q&A. And so without being overly procedural and inhuman, I'm going to say we can't really answer that question, but I would really highly recommend you reach out to town staff, Andrew's email address, or even the phone number for town. You can get a hold of someone that maybe ask that question after the meeting. Sorry about that.
And if there are concerns about current use and kind of what this will do to current uses, that certainly you can provide comment or a letter, and we could provide that within the packet as well.
Yeah, sorry about that. Okay, assuming there's no other public comment, then this would be time for an applicant response or final comment, which there is no applicant present. And so now we will entertain a PCDC motion, and the proposed motion or the recommended motion is to continue until the 14th at 5:30. So if someone can motion that.
So moved.
Is there a second? We have a second from think Commissioner Nath's hand up is first. So we can discuss this if we need to. Is there any concern from the four of us about that date and time?
Yes, okay, I wasn't sure that, so it is this Wednesday, the 14th, okay, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it hasn't been like officially posted, but there was some communications going on.
Yeah, that's what I was asking you.
I'm a straw poll before we do it in the meeting.
Yes,
Are you good to make that meeting?
yeah,
Okay, so the four of us at least will be there, so we'll know we'll have a quorum.
Wednesday, the 14th at 5:30.
Right.
Stop checking.
Everything will be posted.
Yeah, no, I just gotta, I have to get there first.
We can discuss more, but I think probably voting on a motion makes sense at this point. Okay, I'll turn this thing off. Remember, to your right is yes, to your left is no. And it passes unanimously. We will continue the item 5.1 until the 14th at 5:30. And we will feverishly move through two more of these. So 5.2, Planner Bowen, would you mind walking us through the staff report and the difference between this one and the last one, maybe?
Yeah, so again, we're discussing the rezoning request of the rear lot. And that address is 4602 Highland Drive. The applicant, along with the annexation petition of both parcels, has requested R3 in the back. And that's just to preserve this lot, if they decide to try to develop more intense residential uses down there. Again, I'll give a full staff report, but as far as kind of criteria light, that does fall within very present community kind of comment and discussions, but also is bolstered by Lions Thrive Comprehensive Plan and is consistent with our planning efforts. But again, this is 4602 Highland Drive, and that's the rear parcel. So it's this parcel right here. I believe it used to be the Peacock lot.
When,
Okay. I'm still learning the history of some of these parcels, so.
Okay, that's concluded staff report, I think. Any questions for the staff report from the commission? Knowing we'll get it again in a couple days. Okay.
Sorry about that.
So there's no applicant report, presentation on applicant present. Therefore, no questions from the PCDC for the applicant. So any public comment on the second item is now appropriate. If anyone would like to raise their hand online or approach the podium. We'll assume no. No applicant response. And so I will entertain a PCDC motion to continue this item till August 14th at 5:30.
A motion to
motion.
continue this item, whatever the resolution told. Wednesday, August 14th at 5:30.
Thank you. We have a second? We have a second. Okay, no discussion necessary, I'm assuming. All in favor is unanimous. That was good. That's speedy, chop chop. The last is general business, which is a related resolution recommending the annexation of said properties. And we'll kick it off with a staff report.
Yep, so again, this is the Tebow annexation petition. It is for 4545 U Highway and 4602 Highland Drive. Staff has declared and the BOT has declared that the application packet is sufficient and we have gone through all public noticing. And again, this annexation has been long awaited through planning efforts of the community in town and is consistent with our 3-mile plan, the 2012 IGA, and Lions Thrive. So that will be recommending approval of this annexation, that you all recommend approval of this annexation.
Okay. And no further staff report on that.
No, again,
Yeah, that's totally fine. Any questions for staff? Nope. No applicant present for a report. No questions for said applicants. Would anyone like to make public comment on this item of annexation resolution? Nope. Okay. Just going through them all, guys. This is how we do it.
Yeah.
No applicant present for response. I will entertain a PCD motion to continue until August 14th at 5:30.
I move for continuation of resolution 2024-11 until Wednesday, August 14th at 5:30.
Okay,
Second.
we have a
Get it
second.
first.
Very good. There'll be no discussion, we will vote. Okay, unanimous. Thank you. Well, that was fun.
Yeah.
I had
Got
expected
through.
this to be a long night.
Yeah.
Okay.
We still do have 3 more general business items with
Yeah.
resolutions associated, so we'll move through those now. The first one is Andrew's favorite, the farmer's market text amendment.
Now, I'm gonna sign off, guys. Have a good night and have a good rest of your meeting.
Thank you, Brandon.
Hey, Brandon.
Yep, good night.
All right, so, in front of you, planning staff, and Attorney Dittman have prepared both a resolution for you all, to recommend approval of this amendment, along with the proposed ordinance that will be going in front of the BOT as well, and that will be Exhibit A. We have all discussed this, this code amendment at this point a few times. So as you all remember, prior to the last 2 meetings that we couldn't get quorum, or well, yeah. We have discussed this. I think it came in front of you maybe twice at this point. So this is to allow farmers markets as a secondary use as by right in the commercial and CEC zones. And if they are to be the only use, the principal use, that requires a conditional use permit. Planning staff's goal in this was we currently have non-permitted farmers markets that are within town right now. There's just not an application structure or permit structure to make those legitimate uses. So this code amendment is very targeted into section 161090. And this is adding a new section to those specific standards in that chapter. Originally, as you all remember, I had just kind of tagged it on to each use in each district. I didn't think that was the cleanest, and kind of out of our conversations, it seemed like we needed to have it in a better place to be more consistent. So out of those conversations, the ordinance as written, I believe is consistent with you all's recommendation, and I recommend approval I recommend that you recommend approval to the DOT for this code amendment. And again, one other goal was to not, right now, we're not getting any complaints about farmers markets within the community. They're a use that seem to be consistent with what the community wants. So there was a lot of discussion about, what regulations could be kind of tapped into and what was appropriate. And staff wanted to keep those regulations as tight as possible so that current uses, again, that aren't operating in a legitimate manner, do not have to make wide-ranging changes to their operation. And that's the end of my staff report. I hope that we've discussed this as a few times, so, but if you have any questions, just let me know.
What are the other types of things that are collected in this portion of the code besides farmers market? So it's living there with other items, and what are some of those, just to give us some context?
Yeah, so
Sorry to put you on the spot.
in supplemental regulations, we have ADUs, SDRs, fences, hedges, and walls, home businesses, environmental impact analysis for some reason, fiscal impact analyses. So really, this is where, and most communities have this section where we try to tailor regulations that really don't belong, or they'd be very difficult to find in other places.
Okay. Thanks for that. Any questions for Andrew on the staff report? The next step would be to motion on the resolution, and then we can discuss it at the commission. If no questions. Okay, thank you, Andrew. I would entertain a motion to approve or deny the resolution. Not approve or not approve the resolution.
I move to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Do we need to discuss this one at all, or are we good
I would
on?
like to actually make those comments that I emailed you the other week. So that I was going to be out today.
Please.
Couple items, just some code references need to be changed. I'll forward those. But then in the resolution header at the top in bold, it says,
Oh, this is the ordinance, not the resolution.
okay. To allow farmers markets as a permitted use, secondary, associated, or conditional use. Did you revise this then, since the last time we discussed it?
Yeah, you had sent some notes.
Did you forward those notes?
Mhm.
Oh, because it referred to, it also put them into the principal use, and we're
Okay.
approving them for that, you struck that. Okay, so then we're not including this in the principal use sections. Got it, great,
Yep, that's good.
okay,
Cool. Yeah, thanks for double checking that.
cool.
And then I noticed that there's reference to the, like, whenever the uses show up within the zoning, there's reference to that section next to farmer's market, which is great. So there's some doubling up there. which is
Yeah.
nice.
I'm
This is
not a
just
huge
under-
fan of redundancy, but in this case, when things are
Yeah.
separated by code
I think
sections.
it's a nice touch.
This is though a principal use, but it's conditional.
Uh,
It says permitted principal uses include farmer's market.
yeah, that's true. You do have it. So go to page 5 of your, or actually it's right there. So I'll let you ask the question for sake of public record.
Sure, I can't really see so well here.
Yeah.
But where you're
Mhm.
right there, it shows that it's considered a principal use in that list.
Yeah, so we don't. I guess I guess we could put it under subheading 1, accessory building or use. But again, just making note that it goes to that section, but if that's more appropriate to be in 1, that amendment is just fine. I don't think it changes anything. I mean, it's not a principal use, but it's tied to a principal use. So I truly, it probably would be better if it falls under 1 as accessory building or use.
So for semantics purposes, it's a principal use of an accessory building. So it is appropriate the way it's written. It's just kind of confusing
Okay.
to some, but I think it's fine the way it is. 'Cause I think when you get into the section, you figure it out, but they're basically saying it's allowed as a primary for an accessory building. That makes sense.
Or for an accessory, as an
Or as an
accessory.
accessory.
Okay, then why are there two different numbers there? Like I could see a business. So accessory building or use is number 1, but then 2 is a separate section. This goes within 2.
Well, you wouldn't put a farmer's market in an accessory building, so it's saying you can have a business use in the C district, and these are the ones that are available to you.
Okay, so the permitted principal use in a commercial district includes businesses such as farmers markets. That to
Very
me reads it's a principal use.
So you're saying it needs to be under
It just should,
subheading 1, accessory buildings or use,
I think-
A, farmer's market, C section.
I think it shouldn't be in the principal use section at all because it's not a principal use. These are all, like A through Q, those are all principal uses, correct?
Yeah.
But our farmer's market is not. No,
Wow.
because it's
No,
already in the
you're right.
secondary use. It's in the conditional use section. It's also repeated in the principal use section. I'm just not understanding why.
I think this is where it gets into the
That's-
semantics is use by right of secondary
Yes.
associated with the permitted principal use.
Got it.
Because if it's conditional, it basically has to go to like PCDC or board of trustees to be voted on, so.
And it's a conditional use, how it's written, it's a conditional use if
Yeah.
it is the principal use.
I think that's right. I think it's more clear up top in
Okay.
the entire blue section where it says it is principal conditional, but down below it doesn't remind you that it's conditional.
So maybe moving it to 1, but I don't think that's a substantive change that we.
No,
Yeah, if
Approve
you
it.
all, if you all could make that and trust staff to make that change prior to the OT.
Yeah, I forget the wording, but I think that's appropriate.
Okay,
So we could add that to our motion.
okay,
literally like just repeating that down below would be helpful.
Right.
and I'll make that change also within the CEC designation as well.
Okay, thank you.
I think that'll help somebody out someday, so that's good. Yes.
So since the heading does say businesses and then long list of types of businesses, including then now farmers market. Just for the record, so it was addressed, that means that farmers markets are subject to all of the regulations that other businesses are subject to,
That's
such as taxes and so forth. so.
So if you move farmer's market to accessory building or use, it wouldn't have the word business next to it.
But it's an accessory use on a commercial property. Either or, I think, it is an accessory use as it's written, unless it's a conditional use further down.
Right.
But the business that it is an accessory to is described as a business.
That's correct.
And that business is regulated, so, but
Yeah, so I come in and I want to permit a gallery. And that meets number 2, section 16(3)(202). That's an allowed use. And then on the weekends to raise money for that gallery, or if I want to have a community event, a accessory building or use picks up my desire to have a farmer's market. If I'm thinking through, I'm not trying to paraphrase for you, but I think that's the concern, is it's not how it's written. It could be confused that a farmer's market is a principal use, and you don't have, it's permitted by right, and it can be the primary use on the property.
Similarly, I could have a parking garage and on the weekend it's a gallery. These things could all be secondary to each other.
No. Sorry, so that would have to be the accessory use. We don't have, again, our code structure's not set up that way. So you can only have one principal use on a piece of property.
Mhm.
You can have a secondary use, an ADU in the back or whatever, if it's CEC. But no, you would not be able to have, minor automobile repair and a marijuana center located on the same.
Sorry, that's my confusion. This falls in the same indentation, an exact same list of something. It can be secondary to these things, but those things can't be secondary to it, but they're all on the same list.
Okay.
You see my confusion?
Sure. So yeah, I think the easy fix to address that is sticking it in one above in both the C and CEC district, keeping all language exactly the same.
That's fair mention too, like the functional use of this is not for somebody to come to the code and like map out every step they would need for development. They would have to meet with a pre-meeting with staff
That's
anyway. So even if they misunderstood this, technically it's written correctly and it could be explained to them. Which as if we move farmers markets number 1, are we doing something unique that doesn't exist in other parts of the code?
It does not. So we do not
That's my
list
concern.
accessory uses or accessory buildings or uses.
So I think the concern is really valid, and if you'll hear me out, I think the stopgap measure of having a pre-development meeting with staff being a requirement would solve any. Yeah, but it's a really good point. It's like, business owners are not necessarily always sophisticated developers, so.
Sure.
Yeah.
Again, it's just trying to balance, and that was the concern when it was originally brought to you all, was finding the balance of how the code is structured and how it reads right now. But I understand.
So one more question.
Yes, please.
If in the future there's a reason, whatever it would be, to have more specific regulation of farmers markets, would that then fall within, or there be a reference from here to another section of the code that would reference regulation of farmers market?
Sorry, will you repeat that question?
If in the future there's a reason, whatever that might be, for specific regulation of farmers markets, would that be accomplished by having a section of the code describing that regulation and a reference from here to that section?
Yeah, so the reference should never change wherever it is, wherever you all decide. We would, if another restriction was added to the farmers markets, we would plug that into section 161090. And that refers, then that way your uses refer back to that individual section. Is that the question you're asking?
Yeah, this one, as it's written, at least in the uses, it references back to the section here describing what it is. So if this was updated,
So,
that would always reference.
so the description of what it is would then include the requirement for certain regulations to apply. Is that what you're saying?
If I'm understanding you, you're saying where it sits now, it's under the business list, therefore it'd be regulated like a business, but if we move it to the accessory use.
Well, if there were specific regulations related, for example, there are specific regulations obviously related to marijuana centers. If there, not that there ever will be, but if there were, would that then be a separate section with a reference to that separate section, or would it just be included here?
It would be included in the supplemental regulation section.
Correct. Okay,
Okay.
that's fine. And there would be some kind of reference to that supplemental regulation.
Yeah, how it's written right now, it refers you to that section 161090, and that's where the regs live.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so if we ever end up with a 30-page farmer's market
That's
guide.
correct. It will. If you all, if after this you decide that you want to add more regulations, we will add it to 161090. And I'm just not a fan of having regulations in your use tables or, your use classifications.
Yeah, this is actually, we probably shouldn't even be touching that much on regulations other than recognizing the use, the land use, if you will.
That's correct.
And that's fine. I was just saying that if there ever were the need for regulations, where would it be and how?
Yeah, it would be folded into the supplemental section.
And how would somebody who wanted to start a farmer's market on a location find that regulation?
So they'll go to the use table. So I have a commercially zoned property. I look at if farmers markets are allowed. I see that they're allowed, it says C section. So that tells me they're allowed, but there's supplemental standards that I have to follow that are specific to this use. And then I would go to the language on page 4, and that gives me those direct regulations. And, if at some point we want to add, right now, the only true, B and C are the only true kind of regulatory structures for farmers markets is permitted hours of operation and frequency of operation. But if this goes live and we get complaints about, lighting or noise, we can, well, not noise because that's a separate section, but we can tailor those supplemental standards.
Yeah, the fact that they're defined as a business accomplishes a lot.
So the motion on the table is to approve. I think we've had some good discussion. Is there any other discussion that we'd like to bring forward? Okay, let's go to a vote then. You're right, you just let us know. Looks like we're unanimous. Yep. Thank you.
So to be clear, we're holding it as it is without moving it up to the accessory use, correct? I just want to make sure.
I'm pretty sure it's where we landed.
Okay, all right, I just wanted to make sure.
That's good.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, almost had to do it again. All right, Prop 123 strategy conversation. And this is in the form of a resolution, so there'll be a staff report. And I think this is the second or third time we've gone through this, at least slightly, so.
Yeah.
Please take it away.
Sure. Yeah, so as requested by the Board of Trustees, and we did have a meeting last month with DOLA to kind of discuss our Prop 123 goals, our commitment, and to kind of set up that framework. So, aside from, we kind of focus as a community, and at least outrightly, about how many units we have to be able to develop over our 3-year commitment. And everybody knows that that's 10. DOLA requires really the only one strategy within this first commitment period be adopted. And that's an expedited or streamlined approach for affordable housing. I will be, so we have we're in a partnership grant with Boulder County. All municipalities with Boulder County are meeting under an LPC grant from DOLA to figure out how we're going to all streamline our codes and make them more friendly towards affordable housing. The big goal of the county's push and all of the municipalities is we all have different codes. We all have different staffing. We have different abilities of how fast we can streamline things. But to create kind of an affordable housing community at large, each municipality is trying to figure out where we can have consensus in our streamlined approaches. So that's something that staff and staff from all other agencies within Boulder County are working on right now. So I would say that we will, we have to have that strategy as one of our strategies. And again, that's the only strategy that's required for us to, that's the only required strategy that we adopt within the first 3-year commitment. And speaking with Robin DeFalco, Prop 123 funds are going to be competitive. And of course, we're a smaller town. So we're already, it's not a disadvantage, but our projects just aren't going to have the same development opportunity. In Superior, they might have a 500 unit complex that can be built and dedicated to affordable housing. And that's easy for a developer to kind of grasp. In Lyons, we're working with developers for 3 units here, 10 units here, maybe 20 units here. So our projects are much lower capacity. So in order to kind of make ourselves more competitive, the more strategies that we can adopt and tailor to the town of Lyons, the better, just to make ourselves more competitive. So originally when I gave the staff report at the last meeting, I think it was about 2 months ago, I had proposed that we choose 3 strategies. The other strategy that we're actively working on right now is the last other novel, innovative, creative approach is housing authorities. So as you all know, we have another LPC grant. We've got 3 running right now in administration. But we sent out an RFQ for a consultant firm to try to figure out how the peak-to-peak region from Gilpin County down to Lyons can have a collective shared housing authority. That might also include parts of Clear Creek County as well, Idaho Springs. So when all this is done, it is the hope that we will at least have a joint multi-jurisdictional housing authority that runs from Gilpin to Lyons. Also, a part of that is we have another LPC grant for a joint housing coordinator to be shared 20 hours in Lyons, 20 hours in Nederland. We are waiting right now for the town of Nederland. They just got a new town administrator, so he's stepping into a lot of pressing roles. But as soon as we get back from Nederland, we'll be sending out that. We'll be trying to recruit for that position. Hopefully within the next few weeks, I will be meeting with Jonathan, hopefully tomorrow, to kind of make sure that Nederland is getting out of this position what Lyons. We've already vetted through the job description for Lyons. We're just waiting back on them. So I think we technically, we have 2 strategies already that we're seemingly adopting through our grants. So it's really up to the PCDC and the BOT to decide, how many more strategies we want to try to enact. And those strategies will fall on mostly code rewrites and streamlining to get those strategies. I had, and we've also completed, my apologies, ADU use by right. DOLA had written these strategies prior to the last legislative session. So I really don't know if that strategy is going to count, since all municipalities already have to allow them use by rights. So I think just, again, kind of setting ourselves up for the most success possible for the end of this cycle and the start of the next cycle. I think identifying 1 or 2 more strategies, and that would give us a total of 5 that we're actively working on, and we can show the state and we can show DOLA that we're actively working towards affordable housing. In the staff, or in the document that was provided, and I know Robin went into some of these in detail, but all of these were hyperlinks. I hope you all had some opportunity to go in and read about them. But if you have any questions about their meaning or how they can benefit the town, I'm open for questions. But as far as a staff recommendation, kind of the lowest hanging fruit that I see, just from our administrative, but also the town's financial constraints, I think a density bonus program for developers to come in. To be, if they're going to develop affordable housing, being able to build a bit more density than what our current code allows, I think that would be easy for staff and you all and the BOT to try to work through, without too much, it's densification, so there's always going to be some pushback. But this is hopefully densification in already urbanized areas, kind of not on the fringes. So really focusing on redevelopment projects. And then again, we have to do expedited review. The others, they are financial. A lot of these are kind of financial pushes, as a planning staff, and we can have Aaron Kaplan, our utilities director, come in, but we don't really have a lot of carrots that we can give. Currently, the town does offer Macintosh shares, which are drastically lower rate for affordable housing and economic development, and that's a BOT decision. So that might be something we could work on, but I think the density bonuses are certainly easier to tackle. Inclusionary zoning had also highlighted, it's an easy code to write. Most communities in Boulder County are seeking to try some form of inclusionary zoning that range from very, very minorly aggressive to fairly aggressive programs. Right now, as it sits, where inclusionary zoning kind of lives within planning staff's proposal and administrative staff's proposal is through our current IGA. So we haven't, and that's, again, we have an IGA task force that's working on this as well. But at least it's staff's perspective that adding language for inclusionary zoning that's townwide would be hard, just because we do not have a lot of developers coming in. But adding inclusionary zoning language for development of annexable properties seems to be, well, if you want to come into the town, you have to kind of meet our community standards. And I believe that would fall, if it's codified, that would fall within that strategy as well. But I'm open to questions and discussion. These are just recommendations of low-hanging fruit, so.
Yeah, just to help frame this, we went over these originally, I think they were put on our plate before this, but you presented this in a joint board of trustees and PCDC meeting. There were a lot of questions, so went back to find out more, and there was a meeting also to add more context. But these, I think what came out of this, and correct me if I'm wrong, we're not beholden to these goals are not measured against us. We're just merely saying and signaling to our grant provider, if we receive one, these are the areas that we're pursuing, so they can help target recommendations. Is that right?
Yeah, these are carrots and sticks that we can throw out and see what types of development proposals that we can
Okay,
get
so
to meet our affordability
If we
goals.
don't do one, we're not gonna have any kind of.
So someone produces, yeah, the thing that stands out to me is the ADUs on single family zoning districts. That used to be a big, that used to bring people out of the woodwork.
Yeah.
But still, they have to go through the BCD process and all that kind of stuff.
Not anymore.
Oh, no, by right. Oh, no, it is by right. Oh, okay.
So just to add, there may be some future litigation about the ADU use by right. So I'm not sure, but there are many municipalities that are not happy about that and think it's state overreach.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking, that's why when I looked at all this stuff, I'm like, really? This is getting by in all those? That's
Well, it's a bill that will assign it to law, so nobody really has a choice.
That's the one I forgot. That was that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
Okay,
the other thing that Robin brought up that I thought was interesting that falls under novel, innovative and creative approaches is this notion of landlords who are offering affordable rent being reimbursed by the state. So if we had a housing authority, or if we just had, a staff person who could administer a program like that, the state would literally pay a landlord, say a landlord discounted the rent $500 a month to provide a house to somebody at 60% AMI. I don't know, I'm making up the numbers. Then that landlord would get paid directly by the state.
The difference or
The
something.
difference,
Similar
yeah.
to a voucher.
Yeah, so it's kind of
Yeah.
like a voucher, but it's not a voucher that's held by the tenant, if that makes sense.
Yeah, Section 8 or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll bet it.
And for rental, the AMI level is 60%. No one can spend more than 30% of their household medium and their household income. But DOLA's benchmarks for naturally occurring affordable housing is 60% for the rental market and 100% for purchase or equity building lots or properties.
So,
Sorry.
oh no, go ahead.
And the last thing I'll say is, you know, it behooves, it comes down to a very personal and community level as well. That as long as the town is participating and meeting our goals and our commitments, there are real programs that individual families can also take part as rental assistance and down payment assistance. So again, the more we can kind of bolster up our strategies, it will help planning staff, or hopefully when we have a housing coordinator, I don't have to touch this stuff much anymore because we will have somebody that knows what they're talking about. It will make because every November prior to the end date of the period, some staff will have to make justifications for how we have met our commitments, so.
What I was gonna add just procedurally is, I don't know if the Board of Trustees needs our recommendation on these, but they've asked us for our recommendation on these, which is really nice and respectful of land use and us being able to provide our expertise. With that said, I think this document really serves as an excellent resource for us to learn about these things, but they're all heavily nuanced and really complicated. Each one of these links, if you haven't gone through them, lists examples from a large municipality and a small municipality, and it's really interesting stuff. I do think for what this resolution means, unless there's a really, really compelling one that Andrew's missing and you think we should consider because we're Lions and we know about Lions as volunteer commissioners, I think this is a good instance where we should probably look to staff's recommendation to help guide us into the resolution to the Board of Trustees. But that's just my 2 cents. And I don't want to shut down discussion, but I don't think we need to understand all of these intimately to be able to pass this resolution or edit it. Please, Martin.
Forgive me, stop me if I go too far.
That's okay.
These are not strategies, these are tactics. Well, let me back up just a little bit. There are a whole lot of approaches to this whole arena that use words in different ways, and semantics can drive you crazy. I do remember in my early 20s being one of the people who was flown from our project to Chicago so we could learn the difference between objectives and goals. And in the morning, the guy came in and told us, these are objectives. These are objectives. They're not goals. These are objectives. This afternoon, you're going to learn about goals. The guy who came in the afternoon to talk about goals completely flip-flopped what the guy in the morning said. When I look at these tactics, and when you dig down a little bit further, there are more tactics, but they're also somewhat ambiguous and overlapping. You can pick many of these and do all the rest of them within that context. And so to me, selecting some of them for a little bit of more focus, perfectly fine. As long as we realize we could be employing a whole lot of the other tactics in order to achieve the objectives that, so if the strategy is to improve the economic diversity of the town to include more workforce housing and affordable housing for seniors and others. We'll go into great detail there. That's the strategy. And then these are all tactics that would help us get there. These are the hows, not the whats. And but as long as we're getting to the what we want to have as a result, I think, pick several and it's fine. I mean, I'm agreeing really with what, the core book you were saying.
That's well put, you're right, this is all squishy, yeah, you respond.
We will need at least, the BOT will at least need a resolution stating that we have adopted the expedited development review. That's at its bare bones to meet the standards that DOLA has provided all communities that are participating within this first commitment cycle. We will need that, and that will be a BOT decision. You know, what other strategies we can pull into that is completely up to the community.
So I have some comments. Being an affordable housing developer, I definitely have some input on this.
Sure.
I wasn't here for the housing futures discussions back in December and such. So I don't know what you've done so far with respect to the housing authority discussion. But from my perspective, I've seen nothing other than mention that maybe it'll happen. And I would love some transparency around that. Like,
Yes, so being fully transparent, we were awarded the grant 2 months ago. Gilpin County is the awardee. So we have drafted an RFQ. We have sent that RFQ out. We had a very limited response.
sorry, the award was to do exactly what?
To create to hire a consultant to create a
Feasibility.
feasibility study.
Got it,
And so as far as transparency goes, there's really nothing has occurred at this point.
got it.
So
Okay,
we're likely going to re-up the proposal period one more time. I was in Cheyenne for 4 days last week trying to recruit different consultants that I had connections with to get proposals. I believe that, and I gotta get with Rob in Gilpin County. If we open it up, I think we'll at least get another 2 or 3, and which will make that process a bit more competitive. So, but
for consultants.
for consultants,
Yeah.
that's correct.
Because DOLA has a workbook they've put together on how to create or consider if you want to create a housing authority. And one of that is to have a public involvement and a steering committee.
Yep.
You know, and one of the benefits of having a regional housing authority that you can levy taxes,
Yep.
which you can't do at the county housing authority. But I also wonder if we've not spoken to Boulder County Housing Authority, the executive director.
We have.
You know, you have?
Mhm.
Okay. And they,
Boulder County is fully supportive of a multi-jurisdictional housing authority because we have very different needs and we need to tailor our approach to the types of projects that we will be able to capture, hopefully, when this is started. But as far as public engagement strategy, timing, that will come out when we choose the consultant.
and purpose of the housing authority, that will also come out later, like
Yeah.
defining why.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, because to be honest, rural multi-jurisdictional housing authorities that are not in resort communities are not all that common in Colorado.
And, or efficient. Studies have
Yeah.
shown that the smaller authorities aren't as efficient as larger ones when it comes to scale and actually being able to get funding and
Sure.
actually being able to use staff time
Yeah.
and so.
Yeah, and just like if I could provide a little bit of background, the inception of this idea
Yeah.
was me talking to the mayor of Ned, Mayor Billy, about, hey, like our communities have these things in common, we have these challenges in common, we have these needs in common. You know, our communities are both in Boulder County, but it doesn't, it's sort of, square peg round hole sometimes feeling when it comes to getting our housing needs met, because we're not gonna have a 200 unit housing, affordable housing
Yeah.
development here. So we said, well, what if we reached out to Jamestown, and what if we reached out to the other smaller rural mountain communities that kind of match our profile a little bit more and tried to put something together, and then he just ran with it.
And the true hope is, again, our towns are at least our staffing levels. We often just don't have the time, if we get a deed restriction to stay on that deed restriction and to make sure that it's enforced correctly. But also being able to stack, we might not have a 200 unit, development, but working with a single or, stacking developers to do a project of 10 in Ned, a project of 5 or 10 in Lyons, and kind of use that so a developer can kind of spread those assets across the region.
The thought is to partner with private developers, not become like a public landlord, a public housing, landlord.
Well, again,
and voucher administrator and.
those are the details that will have to be ironed out by the consultant. Yeah, and I hate to give that answer, but that's
Kind of, I just
truly.
didn't know where we were. I thought you guys were like thinking about forming one and like, well, why?
No,
Have we
that's,
considered alternatives like creating a housing trust fund?
Yeah.
You know, or working more closely with Leaf to have
that,
like mortgage, assistance and.
as far as the expectations that that made very clear within the RFQ is that there will be a heavy, individual, community, public participation process. But then there will also be a heavy regional, just, so we find all the details for the communities and then we figure out how to really set these up. Cause, our housing approach is very different than Ned's. I mean, there's differences already within the peak to peak, but they're a little less different than, the other kind of, your larger municipalities.
So that was gonna be my next question. Did you want to say something?
I want to interject respectfully that this is not a workshop on housing authority. This is our recommendation of these strategies that have been provided to us by the state. So if we want to remove this one because we're uncomfortable, I think we could discuss that item.
I was about to go to my conclusion on this.
Yeah,
So,
please, go ahead.
sorry. So I guess what I was saying was, if you're seriously thinking about forming a housing authority with NED, I read the NED housing needs assessment, and they have different strategies.
Yep.
Do you want to align your strategies so that you look like you're on the same page with them as a housing authority?
I think it's fine for each community out of this process to maintain their unique approaches. But that's gonna be the challenge for this consultant is, how to be able to tailor individual community approach with a regional perspective. And again, being able to stack capital where possible to be able to build projects across the region.
Maybe asked a different way, do you see any harm in including specificity to the housing authority, peak to peak housing authority in our recommendations in response to our grant when our potential partners are not including it on theirs, which I think was the question.
No, because the strategy is the housing authority, not the details of the housing authority. So if that makes sense. So I
Maybe
think,
our resolution then could just eliminate the peak to peak housing authority reference and just include housing authority.
sure.
But that maybe get the job done for today at least, and knowing that there's so much work to be done.
And do you guys have any opinions on the vacant land being used? I mean, I know NED is doing that, and that is interesting. We have some here. Especially in light of our other discussions tonight, just the land that's available to be developed.
We do not have a lot of vacant land that is not encumbered or would not take a larger community effort and have already gone through community efforts in the past. Like, it's in our code that if any parks and open space land is to be used as affordable housing, it has to go in front of, the community for a public vote. And this isn't trying to get around community process whatsoever. Staff recognize these as the least intensive strategies, on the community.
I'd like to add to that too, because I was really laser focused on this, because I was under the impression that there was some possibility of development of HUD buyback properties. And so I did talk to on my own, like not as a town of Lyons representative by any means, but I did talk to HUD and DOLA about that, and then it's locked down. There's no way it'll be developed. So, and their reasoning was they wouldn't want affordable housing to be developed in properties that were considered blighted in any way, and having a 100-year floodplain or a 500-year floodplain might be considered that. So those are off the table. So now we're talking about parks and open space.
Yeah, we don't have, we have a few publicly owned, and, housing, I believe I'll have to go and confirm it with the code in a bit, but even zone or municipally zoned or public service zoned housing is currently not allowed in those areas or those districts either. So again, and I think there would be much more community feedback to build affordable housing on Tank Hill than to try to offer a density bonus, somewhere down here, to make a project happen, but I won't.
It doesn't mean that we can't pursue it.
Yeah, we can pursue anything,
No,
but
I mean, it doesn't mean we can't pursue it. To Barney's point of none of these things are mutually exclusive. So, use of vacant publicly owned property for affordable housing, depending if the climate of everything in Lyons changed and shifted and pivoted, that might be on the table again. But just because we don't highlight it yellow in this resolution doesn't mean we can't circle back to it and visit it at a later time.
And I think about the post office. You know, the post office leases that property from the town.
Oh, they said, really? Oh, I didn't.
And so if at some point the post office decides they wanna move or consolidate somewhere else, there's that pretty sizable parcel right downtown. So you just never know,
Never know.
you never know.
I didn't.
But to kind of, veer this in the direction towards the resolution, would you want us to consider including that as part of the commission's
The density bonus.
resolution? No, the vacant public owned land.
Not if there's not a lot of it.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's not very foreseeable,
right. I was with you until I talked
possible, but not.
buyout properties are not typically.
Yeah.
Okay, any other discussion on the items? Whether or not we should include some, drop others, or go with, the motion was to approve a resolution that's presented, so we would be voting on this as it is in its current state. We did discuss briefly, maybe we should circle back to it, if it would be appropriate to remove Peak Housing Authority from the description.
I think it would be.
I'm fine with that.
And lessened minimum parking. There's a lot of concrete in this town these days. Do we not care to talk about that one?
Again, there was, I just gave a talk on
Especially
all of
the-
our legislative, there was a, let me just pull it up real quick.
while you're pulling up, I just want to say, like, with our definition of family changing and maybe trending co-housing in some of the larger houses, do we still need the same parking requirements?
So, don't know what happened. I'll have to pull that, but there was in the last legislative section or session, it was also adopted that, you cannot use parking restrictions as a way to keep out multifamily or affordable housing, if you fall within a council of government, which we do. We're under Dr. Cog, so we lost that requirement already. So it's a strategy we could adopt, but we were already told that we seemingly had to adopt it. So again, it doesn't matter. It's just when we're justifying these strategies, November 28th of 2026, I don't want to get kickback from DOLA. Oh, well, these aren't actually strategies that you've adopted because ADUs are already allowed by right and the parking restrictions have already been lifted or substantially changed through state legislation.
I have a suggestion. My suggestion would be to approve this resolution as it is. And then give direction to staff to consider and pursue other tactics or strategies that may be beneficial to achieving our Lions Thrive comp plan objectives.
Outside of these strategies or kind of the feasibility of these strategies?
Just the way I said it,
Okay.
not saying it's not in here, so you can't do it.
Okay,
Nor, it's in here, so that's exactly what we have to do and nothing else.
sure.
It's more saying, look, we're going to approve this, we have some strategies, help get things going, maybe some money flowing and that sort of thing. But in a context that says, let's be a little more fluid about it in terms of our, the actions that we take to effectuate the improvement of affordable housing, for the workforce, for seniors, et cetera.
And you don't want to focus on subsidizing, reducing local government fees because
I think that, again, what was identified from planning staff are planning initiatives that we can directly drive. If we're going to have that discussion, and that could be a discussion we have, we certainly need to pull in utilities board, utilities and other groups.
And somebody could say, look, here's an innovative strategy. We're going to adjust the cost for utilities in a given situation. These things are so overlapping, and so that's what I'm trying to say. Let's just move forward with the recommendations along with the staff direction that says, that doesn't mean you can't do all these other things.
Sure.
And if they won't help, let's do it. Agreeing to this isn't shutting down the incentive to do what's gonna help
it's just giving us initial focus. Like
Yeah.
we're focusing on these things first.
get started and
And I did confirm with Robin that if we do through resolution, if the town does adopt these strategies, if we can't prove that one of these strategies led to housing development, it only matters that we adopted the strategies. So we're not going to be penalized for not being able to say, well, this part of our commitment went to this strategy, this part of this commitment goes back. So
Makes me wonder if the state just wanted us to start arguing about these as early as possible. Just to get the ball rolling. Okay, so. That proposed, or the proposed motion and Barney's sort of advice or direction that we just take the motion as is would mean that we leave the peak to peak housing authority reference in. I do not care. I think we've already agreed to take it out.
I would like to take it out.
Okay, so we'll need an amendment, motion to amend the table, or excuse me, we need an amendment motion to amend the motion to approve the resolution by removing the peak to peak housing authority reference.
And I'm sorry, I have one more question.
Yeah.
So if the ADU legislation is overturned, can we then decide to make that a strategy that we focus on? Because I quite like it.
You betcha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, isn't it, we already made it code, right? So it's in our code.
we did, we've already
But we're
adopted.
not
that
going to
language.
challenge it at this point.
We got adopted.
Adopted.
So I'll have to go back. This is when I first got here. There was the task force from PCDC and
Well, we sent it up
Alex.
to the board of trustees.
Mhm.
To
So,
make the ADUs by right in every residential.
yeah, it cleared us and went to you.
Right, okay.
yeah, so it's,
Yeah, except that, that did not include HOAs.
Right.
Yeah.
Now this does include HOAs.
Right.
Hmm.
But my point is if the state, pulls back their House bill, we still have code that allows it to use by right
that's
in our zoning districts.
Well, it's right, use by right in the zones in which they were already allowed,
You're right.
so they're not conditional use anymore.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're not reviewing backyard meetings.
Yeah.
And so that satisfies making it easier to get it done.
That's correct.
Yeah, but we enacted it before Prop 123, I think. I don't know about the timing there, like,
Yeah, I
I
can
don't know
go
what-
back and look
yeah.
at the time.
I'm just highlighting the ambiguity.
yeah, no, yeah. I see it.
Yeah, we also have like 3 different single family zoning districts, right? So we could make it by right in one of them and not all of them and probably still satisfy the strategy. Okay, enough of that. So, would someone motion to amend the original motion by removing peak to peak housing authority reference?
I move to amend the resolution by removing the peak to peak housing authority reference.
Do we have a second? Still second? Okay, let's vote on that one. Go ahead and log in your votes. 3, 2, 1. It is unanimous. So now the motion on the table is the motion to approve the resolution with removal of peak to peak housing authority and
As amended.
as amended, thank you. And we do have a staff directive, but I don't think we need to read the staff directive as part of the motion.
No.
Okay, so all in favor of approving the resolution? And unanimous? Okay, thank you.
May I ask just one clarifying question?
I would hope so.
Is that just to remove the language peak to peak?
Yes.
Yes.
And we're keeping that as a strategy?
Housing authority, yes.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, please, thank you.
Yeah, I needed that, yeah, I want to make sure that's.
Confirm the resolution.
Thank you.
My understanding, yeah.
It's
I just
you
want to
decided
understand
with
the
specific
expectations.
Wording, yeah.
Just for clarification, does that mean, and it's a totally hypothetical thought, but for example, if while we're doing this, Longmont came to us with this incredibly beneficial strategy, the way it's worded now, we could say, well, we're not going to spend as much time with the peak to peak deal. We're going after this Longmont deal because it's enormously more beneficial.
That-
And so we've made it broader, if you will.
Yeah. Inclusive. That's a nice way to put it. Are you Julie? No, okay, we were waiting on somebody, I didn't
I
know.
did text Julie, I heard back from her, there was just some confusion, but it sounds like she'll be here on Wednesday.
That's great.
Sounds
Okay,
like-
so we'll go ahead and kick that one to Wednesday as well. We don't need to vote on that, do we? No, okay, good. It's an agenda item. Okay. Last part of our general business before we adjourn and go into public workshop is 6.4 minimum lot area subdivision variance text amendment. Glenn Brown.
All right, so if you all remember, just right about a month ago, I had brought forth a text amendment that sought to allow the historic double lots on the original town plat, 1929 plat, to be subdivided. The purpose of that text amendment was following some legislative intent from back in 2022. A text amendment was adopted for this reason, to allow that. Unfortunately, how that code was written, it just did not actually allow those lots to be subdivided. All it did was bring all of the lots that aren't 7,000 square feet, because that's the minimum lot size in the R1 district. It brought those out of the legally non-conforming and put them into just your conforming lots.
Right.
So this was to try to address that concern. You all voted to recommend approval to the BOT. At the BOT, through some public comment and also comment and dialogue amongst the members of the BOT, a more tailored approach, not kind of a blanket approval to allow the subdivision, kind of a more tailored approach was asked for staff to go back and try to figure out. So that's what you all are seeing now. So it's, yeah, I'll bring it up right now. Sorry when it was. Just a second, my apologies. Oh, sorry, it's a really small screen. It's share screen. So as it is written currently, the language is fairly the same. Make sure I bring up the right one. The language is still the same, and let me bring up the ordinance for you all. So, but we're adding a variance process for all of these subdivisions to occur in. So we had to change 3 different sections. So we're adding minimum lot area variance, means a reduction or other dispensation concerning the minimum lot area requirement of section, and this is that section that requires the 7,000 square foot minimum lot size. And then under the Board of Adjustments, their authority, since they're the board that hears these requests, we added hear and decide all requests for minimum lot area variance from the minimum lot area requirement, again, of this section. And then in the R1 low density district, this language is going to feel much the same as it was previously proposed. That the Board of Adjustment may approve a variance from the minimum lot area required by section. Again, in order to grant a variance from the section, the Board of Adjustment shall find that all of the following have been satisfied. And this is the language that had already been there. The lot to be subdivided is legally described standard lot, double lot of the town of Lyons platted blocks as recorded on March 20th, 1929. No such lot shall be subdivided more than once. No such lot shall be subdivided into more than 2 lots. And no resulting lot of a subdivision or lot recorded on March 20th, 1929 shall be less than 6,000 square feet. And in order to have more community feedback and grant kind of a more robust community feedback loop, the Board of Adjustment, they have to be able to make these findings prior to approval. But they also should consider the following: that the variance, if granted, will not adversely affect the proposed development or use of an adjacent property or neighborhood. The variance, if granted, will not change the character of the zoning district in which the property is located. The variance, if granted, is in keeping with the intent of this code, and that the variance, if granted, will not adversely affect the health, safety, or welfare of the citizens of, I said the United States for some reason, of the town. So again, this sets up kind of a concrete framework for the Board of Adjustment criteria that they have to find, but also helps to address more of those community concerns that we heard at the BOT meeting. So that's as drafted as proposed. As far as kind of the planning ramifications, there are around 12 lots that could take advantage of this code rewrite. They're all, again, on the original plat. So we're looking at north of here and in the confluence. Nowhere else any of the subdivisions would be able to take advantage of this code language. And it requires them, every property owner, to come in and get this variance first. So that's the first public hearing phase. And then they'd have to again come in for a minor subdivision, which also requires a public hearing. So it's got a double community feedback and hearing loop. So hopefully,
Just know that too, I mean, actually, I know this is why Andrea's here, but, yeah, I think the lots, the double lots, they're not very buildable, or some of them have some.
A few of them are, a few of them are not. My home was in the 1929 plat on a 12,000 square foot lot. Our lot is less than 6,000 square feet now.
Okay.
So, and just as a little bit more background, this passed unanimously in the previous board, the being able to subdivide the legislative intent. When it came before this board, we were 6 that evening, we're missing a board member, it was a tied vote, and so it failed. Just so you have that context. Also, I don't know if it goes here, but the board discussed having a provision where a property owner could appeal a Board of Adjustment decision to the Board of Trustees.
I do have a question if I can ask it now. So you probably know more about this than I do, but I think around the 1950s, lot sizes were a lot smaller than they are now. Like 3,500 square feet on average. And so, something's been really trending upwards, but now as a strategy to create more housing and more affordable housing, people are going back down to those small lot sizes. And we're in a position where if we just halved the majority of our lots, we'd be there. So I don't know if we're really thinking about somewhere in the future, making like a division by rate, or something where every lot could be 3,500 and now you have homes all over.
sure. Yeah, so that would be a much larger lift to change R1 zoning to bring down minimum lot size. And, you've got a lot, if you're going kind of community wide, there's a lot more things you need to consider. Our road widths, our alleys, our parking structures, our utilities.
Residents don't want it.
Water,
You know,
water, request the water availability to even.
Yeah.
Even.
Well, that brings me to my question then, because in our housing needs assessment, we had, and I don't know if you guys thought about this, but very ambitious growth goals. For instance, I think we wanted to add at least on average 10 owner occupied homes and 4 renter occupied homes every single year in Lyons. I mean, how do we add 14 homes a year here?
yes.
Well,
Through 2050.
yeah, the Housing Futures Plan had an addendum amended to it.
Okay,
So those were not goals that were adopted by the Board of Trustees.
okay,
Those were goals that were suggested by the consultants.
okay.
This kind of the planner speak or the jargon behind this theory is it's gentle densification. So it's not a huge lift on the community to have 12 more homes, but it is, if again, there are properties that this would open up allowance to that it's just not feasible due to topography, all sorts of things. So it's very unlikely that out of this tomorrow or 30 days after the BOT passes an ordinance that we'll get 12 minor subdivision requests.
Right.
One of those lots is where the post office is.
Okay. Yeah, there was a lot of opposition to this
Oh,
already, so.
We did,
Okay.
before Planner Bone was here, we did discuss minimum lot size standards in a workshop. And I think there was enough momentum and interest with the PCDC that we should pick it up again where it belongs in the agenda, or not agenda, where future agendas with staff and what your guys' goals are, I don't know. But it probably should follow our consideration of simplifying residential zoning in Lyons overall, which is sort of a problem. So I I think we should take it on amongst the commission to kind of remind ourselves that we want to do that. And then also staff, you guys kind of keep your eyes on if there's opportunities with other things that are happening, other grants that are available, the things that you do.
Okay.
And if there's an alignment on that, we should definitely pick it up again in a workshop, because it's a really good topic. But you did just step on like 2 of the landmines of the last 6 months. With your comments. That was a huge plan and lot size, which is great. But I think we should pick it up again. But I think having really good clarification on our affordable housing goals first is probably the first step, and then looking at whether or not that should be folded into a simplification of our residential zoning is probably the second step.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, very good. Other questions for staff?
Well, this is enough to be dealt with here, but something I've been kind of wondering is like with our water shares, or when people use the water, when people have municipal water usage, like at home, usually it's like lawn watering is their biggest. That's, if people aren't using their full, what expected amount, does that mean there's water left over that means that could be more available to like higher density?
It doesn't quite work like that.
Yeah, I'm just saying, in the way we use water, because if you eliminate a lot of the lawn watering, is it expected? I mean, is there an opportunity there? Is there a way? Yeah,
It doesn't quite work like that.
okay.
And I'm certainly not staff to answer kind of water questions, but if that's something that you all would like to go into, I could certainly get the right staff
I'm
lined
just
up to
trying to think
have that
about it,
discussion.
because of living in the American West,
Yeah.
and the water issues, I'm always trying
The
to.
planning side, how it works is when you set up the use, when you obtain the entitlement, you attach the water right to it. Whether
Yeah.
you use all of it or not, you don't get.
Well, and then does that now, and now where I'm going with it is now they're in excess that could be sold, I mean, I'm trying to think,
I don't
Yeah.
think so, but I.
I'm just trying to think differently and what availability and how to make a creative, innovative solution, okay?
Sure.
I'm sorry, that's.
No, I appreciate that.
It's a good question.
Yeah,
We do pay more if we use more.
yeah,
There's
exactly,
that, but you're kind of asking like, how much water do we need to support more growth?
exactly, well, more density, well, maybe we could have more affordable housing,
But we don't have enough water.
yeah, exactly, yeah,
I hear you.
yeah, exactly.
There is some question of whether an HOA can buy water, right? Which is interesting. All right, so
Okay.
back to the resolution. I think, so it seems like structurally this is basically the same as a couple of riders around the Board of Variance criteria when we're reviewing, right? So is there any questions about the changes in the criteria set forth for the Board of Adjustments to make this sort of a call? Based on the staff report? No. Okay, let's then, that was staff report and discussion, so let's put this into motion. I entertain a motion on the resolution 2024-09 PCDC.
Is there any timing requirement to this? Like, do they have to do this in 60 days? Like a variance review? Like any sort of expedited review for this process? Is there any time? Can it take 3 years?
This exists forever in our code.
No, this exists, but like if somebody wants to subdivide and they want to go through this board of adjustments, are they promised that they'll have an answer in 60 days?
This will fall under the same regulations as all variance requests,
Okay.
so the commitments, and I'll have to look at that language, but the commitments that the Board of Adjustments have to hear it within 60 days or whatever of submittal, they would also, this is just a subsection of variances. And if I may state for the record, just because, again, this was prepared just a few days after it was not continued to second reading. This is not in any way staff or town staff's try to get this through in the same iteration without, trying to tailor this to a single or two property owners. But again, we had legislative intent, and this is something that the town previously worked on, and we just tried to tailor it to each property. That's more for staff's benefit. We're on the record then.
So,
With that, I close.
Okay, any motion on this resolution?
We
To approve.
comment.
Oh, is this a public comment?
Andrew.
You're welcome.
I appreciate that. Andrea, Philip 218 High Street in Lyons, and I was at the prior meetings. And am glad that we're here tonight to discuss this in a new format, and that I think is a lot more input. I think there were some property owners of lots that were included in the 12 that were unhappy to hear about their possibility of things being subdivided, even though nothing would happen without their permission, of course. But the fact that there can be now more input from the community, or from the neighbors, and that is actually a question. I know you're not supposed to answer questions, but I don't know if the municipal code requires that, what was it, 300 feet of neighbors would be notified if someone is planning to subdivide their property.
Yeah, so as part of the variance public hearing process and the minor subdivision, all property owners within that 300-foot buffer would receive first-class mail inviting and soliciting input.
Okay, thank you. And one of the reasons that it got some citizens riled up was that it is in the older part of town, and there's old growth trees, there's alleys, there's already parking problems in a lot of neighborhoods. And so looking for density and in some of those places was not the most practical, as you know. So that's, I have other comments, but they're more general toward the community. Can I ask one other question while I have my moment here?
Go for it.
Lee Williams, 9 units over here. Do those count for the DOLA?
So, is it okay if I answer the questions?
This is why.
So they were permitted prior to our commitment date. That being said, there is such thing, and they're not deed restricted, so they do not meet the standards of DOLA to fall into that commitment.
Okay,
The however is that DOLA is allowing planning staff or town staff to justify what's called naturally affordable units. So again, that's, they have their own standards, but if staff and the developer can show that those units are indeed naturally affordable, which I imagine some of them will be, we will be able to likely count at least a few of those towards our Prop 123 goals.
okay, that'd be great. And also in this area where a lot of these subdivided lots are being proposed, the trailer park up on, right behind you, Holly, being for sale. I mentioned it to a neighbor who's a builder who's working with Colorado and California partnership, who are looking for developments to build. And wouldn't it be nice if they built something like Lions Glen there if it's going to be redeveloped? So I'm all for that. I'm not against development, but if we could have another Lions Glen in our community, I think that would be very nice.
Where's mine's now?
It's the condos behind Hedges.
Oh, there's, the townhouses too, like, are them become both, or?
Well, I'm just throwing that out.
Are those 2 stories, 3 stories?
They're 2 stories.
Yeah, and then.
How many units all?
8, I think.
Yes, but this lot where the trailers are up there, that's a much bigger.
We've batted around the idea of changing that to a fixed foundation, deed restricted. Community, yeah, so that's definitely been on the table.
Okay,
And I can confirm, it's been said in public meetings before, there is an affordable housing developer right now looking to purchase that lot. They just have to work out their details, and that's up to the private markets. And there's only so much that staff can do to encourage, especially we just don't have the carrots at this point to really encourage, but that is a conversation that's been occurring.
because that would certainly take care of a lot of the needs. So, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for your patience. Okay, let's entertain a motion then for resolution 2024-09 BCDC minimum lot area subdivision variance text amendment.
I'm moved for that.
to approve.
It's a mouthful, I don't have it in front of me to read, so yeah.
So move to approve. Do we have a second on that motion?
I'll second.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead and put in your votes, please. 3, 2, 1. Passed unanimous. Very good. Thank you. And I think we are safe now to adjourn our,
No dark skies tonight.
well, that's a public workshop, believe it or not. So
Oh, okay.
we're gonna adjourn the public hearings and general business. And do we need a vote to adjourn? Thank you, Holly. All in favor of adjourning? Well, we actually need a motion. So someone motion to
Move for
adjourn. Thank you.
German of
Come on.
German.
The public hearing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In a second?
Oh, sorry, should I be second?
Okay, great.
Is that how we work? Okay, yeah.
All in favor? Great, we now may adjourn.
You guys saw the appetite for it, we're only 90 minutes into this, 90 minutes. So I think we should just go ahead and, like, if you think, later on that dark skies conversation is not too much.
Okay, yeah, just know that you're on. Thank you.
No problem.
We good? All right. So to cue this up, this is one strategy in the comprehensive plan is to adopt dark sky regulations. The regulations, we haven't drafted any whatsoever, and Cassidy's kind of taken the helm on this one. Getting dark sky compliant to become a dark sky community, I think would be unfeasible right now. That takes a lot more community effort, community programming, just a lot more. But in order to at least address some, and we've heard it, we heard it a few times with a previous application. There's some worries about the community about light pollution. And we have right now, we have in our commercial design standards codified language that tries to get to kind of dark sky community, to a dark sky community plan or a dark sky community. But they just don't go far enough. So at least to try to start reaching our goals towards that end and towards the Alliance 5 comprehensive plan, Cassidy's just kind of put together a quick analysis and spreadsheet and PowerPoint of what other communities are doing. And it's a menu of options. And the point of this workshop is first to get the appetite from the PCDC if you all would like us to move forward. But then also if you would like us to move forward, Cassidy has provided kind of what those different range of options look like and how other communities are approaching dark skies. And with that, Cassidy, you can take it away.
Hi, okay, I'm gonna share the presentation, I'm hoping. Uh-oh. Can you see that?
Yep, we sure can.
Okay, so I'll try and keep it brief. I know it's already over time. And I think Andrew already queued some of this up, but why dark skies? Publicity and tourism, that kind of ties in with the thriving year-round economy. Natural resources conservation, it's helping animals, the natural environment. Energy savings, it can help encourage savings basically when you're using the light and not wasting it. You're saving energy. That includes using timers. And then the community pride, I thought it kind of tied in with Lions' identity in the small town feel, being able to see the sky and the stars. And then lastly, public health and safety. That's not necessarily directly tying into the comprehensive plan, but I think something pretty much everyone values. And so these are just some photos of examples. In Florida, the baby turtles see the light and think it's the sun, and they crawl the other way. In Colorado, we have events like Lights Out Colorado to help the birds. It's just glare, and then the picture of the yellow garage is just showing that more light doesn't necessarily mean more safety. You can see when they put their hand in front, there's a person standing in the shadows. So just kind of pointing out that if you use lights correctly, it's different than if you just use excessive lighting. And who in Colorado, there are 15 certified places. I don't think that's the goal of Lions to become a certified dark sky community. There are lots of municipalities that have ordinances, and that includes Fort Collins and Boulder, but also Crestone and Ridgeway and plenty others. And so what does Lions do? Well, we have a dark sky mention in the comprehensive plan that encourages the use of lighting and policies that support the protection of Lions' dark skies, and again, recognizes them as a community resource. And then a strategy in the comprehensive plan is to update the development standards to address dark sky protection, and that includes streetlight policy. And there's just a little cartoon at the bottom that I like that also shows that matters in residential. I'm sure we all have or have lived somewhere where your neighbor's light shining in your window keeps you up at night. So that's just one of the human health factors. And this is just a nice chart. You can refer back to it, but it shows different lighting ordinances and who has them, who doesn't. And the why of all of them is kind of included in different dark sky readings. But that can include light trespass, different color of lighting, requiring controls. So just a lot of options for what you can do in a community. And as you can see, it does vary. Our current code requires in the development review, the location, height, and type of lighting. And then the section 16.670 is the commercial design review. So you can see safety is a prime consideration. Lighting should be compatible with the building and the landscape. And it does say directed and shielded in a manner that does not leave the perimeter, and then timing is encouraged. So some of it's a little bit vague. This I pulled from Fort Collins, just kind of showing you can be more specific or have some more rules. And I won't dig into them more, but you can pull up Boulder is very similar. Boulder has a lot of different requirements. And so also in Fort Collins, I did also want to mention that their purpose is, they mention safety, energy conservation, and protecting ecosystems. We just mentioned safety. And then I think that what they lay out is just a little bit more clear in what they require, rather than Lions kind of suggests at the moment. And then kind of talking with Aaron and utilities, Lions was the recipient of a grant, and they're kind of working on, they're waiting for input from boards on an RFP for this study to look at streetlights. So that's just something that's in progress but paused. So just kind of to summarize, dark skies kind of touch a lot of different areas of the comprehensive plan: human health, animal health, energy savings, tourism and publicity. And it's mentioned a lot in the comprehensive plan. And I did also want to point out that there is a Lights Out Lions event coming up in 12 days. So it's something that even kids and families are kind of looking at or seeing the benefits of within the town. And that is pretty much it. from me. That was, yeah, if you have questions or recommendations or want to think about it. Yeah, that's the end of the presentation though.
I had something to think about, so I live in Lions Valley Park, I live on the corner of Raymond and McCullough, the yellow house on the corner, for one. So I'm right across the street from the new Summit Housing Development. So when they designed, I know you mentioned, you've seen a lot of mention commercial, but I don't think people realize when they design that they put street lights, the same as like you have downtown. I was like, why are the street lights so high? This is in a residential neighborhood. Well, we have smaller, low, like multifamily apartment buildings there. And they're only like 2-3 story, are they 3-story? I think, yeah, 2-story. Two there, two, yeah, two, and, the thing is, those streetlights, it was when I driving home one of these BCD meetings one night that I just, oh, this is why the streetlights are so high in there. Because where I'm going is that, our neighborhood was designed, I think, all the streetlight, all the, like, our outdoor lights, like on our houses are, they have the lamps on them that point the light down. That preserves the dark sky. And, I don't think when they built that they thought about them. The streetlights in that section, I think, because there's like usually when you have a little more density, you don't have it in a single family residential. When you have those 2-story like apartments, you're usually closer into town. Well, now I think they turn them off at night. I don't know if someone complained because they were on, because they were so bright at night, because I'm not sure if that's reflected in the code but I think it should be part of discussion, because I think it caught some people off guard. I think that, they were just following that development review, but I think it's something that to preserve the dark sky, and especially in residential, and if you want to go more density, you need to think about how, and I used to work with, of course, with lighting consultants, like, you can do a lot with lighting to limit the, how dark, like still direct lighting without, and reduce the amount of light pollution you have. I just think some in the residential part of the code or wherever, when you do like maybe higher density developments, think a little bit more about how you design your lighting so that it minimizes, well, for me, the streets are so lights are so high, and I'm like, oh, in my neighborhood, and they're very bright at night. I think somebody just started, people must have complained, and even in that section of the neighborhood, can you turn them off? Because it's so bright, you must have been shining into their houses and things. I just think a little more thought needs to be put into some of the design, and when we start applying, a little more density and make, and a good example of where they've lowered them is in Stone Canyon. They actually have streetlights, and they're the yellowing kind. I don't know if that's kind of like what, like you might see, so that they don't produce as much, like, but they're on the street, they're still streetlights, but they're yellow, and they're not quite, I don't think they're as high, but they do have them along the streets there, if that makes any sense. You might have to drive up there to see what I'm talking about, but.
Yeah, and that gets into, so right now, we don't regulate kind of Kelvin or the actual kind of heat or temperature or the color of the bulb itself. And some, some do, so.
But I just have, you've been Stone Canyon, right, literally the subdivision right across the highway, it looks like the.
It'd be interesting to do an inventory of what streetlights are where.
And what are bulbs? I would love to know.
I will tell you that, streetlights in my neighborhood get blown out with BB guns regularly.
Well, that's the other thing, I used to live in Denver, and when we lived next day, that's a lot of people, that's a huge problem they have in cities, they blow out the street bulbs, because they want to shine in their windows, they do that all the time, but you see that in cities all over the country.
And we have no streetlights where I live.
See,
It's just dark, but then you've got the neighbor with the safety lights.
Do you know if, an ordinance in our town would overrule CDOT, or would CDOT have lighting?
If it's in the right way.
Oh,
I do know that in their design phase, CDOT will work to try to work with, if it's an adopted code and you have, code language. At least most districts in most states that I've worked with, I've never worked with our district of CDOT. They generally try to work with towns to come as close. They're not beholden because it's their right of way or their land, but they normally, if it's codified, they'll normally try to get as close as possible, still meeting their safety specs.
who pays the electricity costs for CDOT street lamps?
CDOT,
Yeah.
Okay.
as far as I know.
So in the comparison table, which is really interesting, Fort Collins, Crescent, model ordinance in Boulder, there's existing lighting and amortization. Does that just mean the replacement of existing fixtures? It looks like that's pretty common, so that's interesting. So if we were to enact an ordinance, whatever our ordinance would be, and we get to decide what it is, we would be effectively asking people in town, businesses, homeowners, potentially to change existing fixtures that are on their house over a certain period of time, or run the risk of, being fined.
You could either, it's how it's drafted, but
Right.
it's all new lighting after this goes into effect, or you can run an amortization schedule and bring people into compliance.
And I imagine there's grants available to help people who want to participate.
Or to take an inventory, that could take a while. Somebody walking around looking at every single light on every single house.
I was gonna say, if that's something I need to take an evening run and start,
Functionally, these ordinances don't always exist to be like, there's not like an inspector that goes around and
Yeah.
inspects the
Right.
lights, but it's like if somebody complains, now there's.
Yeah, it's, I wonder if it's like, yeah, they must have complained to turn the lights off because,
Yeah.
yeah, we didn't, it was really, I mean, I don't, yeah, it's just really, I mean, my head, the other side of
Yeah.
my neighborhood does get dark at night, and I remember walking in from someone's house and like the darkness, like, oh, and we were having a lot of bears and then in the community in the neighborhood too, and I didn't want to kill them. I was walking like 2 blocks,
So,
you know?
As a practicing architect, specking lights that are dark sky compliant, like it really is just a manufacturer's label that comes with it. There's not, at least not in Boulder where I've practiced commercially and residentially. And in Denver, I don't recall there ever being any kind of like color, temperature or
Okay.
throw, or it's just really like the fixture, literally the fixture itself has a hood that
It's
makes
just
it the
not
light
a
cannot
direct
be,
light.
fully cut off.
cannot be, yeah, full cut off, cannot be directed upward. So like
Because we have the
the
full cut
bulb
off.
itself, none of that stuff is covered in the night sky ordinance. If we wanted to make it about energy efficiency, I don't know if that would belong in that, and that's one of the questions I had through the presentation, is I see that word efficiency.
Yeah.
But like, could the type of bulb and the amount of energy it uses become part of that ordinance, or would that be inappropriate?
Yeah, no, so when I was with Teton County, Wyoming, we had a lumen reader in, the planning department, and, I mean, of course, it's, you're in the Yellowstone ecosystem, so there's a lot more, pressing matters to dark sky, but, I mean, we would actually, when we had a new building be built or a new residence be built, we would actually go out the night prior to CO and read the lumens and the Kelvin temperature, to enforce the code, but that's the far, that's the very far, and
When we have our energy code, we should probably take care of most of it. I just curious if that was part
I
of it.
think on the island of Hawaii, because they have this observatory right on the top, they actually.
Not a lot.
Yeah, they do. I know they have the cover, but I thought they had to have the color of the lamp actually mattered too, to
Yeah.
preserve some yeah, something like that.
Hilton Head, South Carolina also has one of the most restrictive lighting policies, just for the turtle thing. But you have to be on the orange spectrum. You can't be,
Okay, so I'm not
blue to
being, I'm
white.
not like making this up. when I-
No, it's,
Okay.
there are
Okay.
codes out there
Yeah,
that we can
okay.
use. That's part of this conversation is kind of, what does that look like and what is the best fit for Lions,
It's interesting. Is it a land use issue, dark sky?
It's like, it seems like
It's like a
light
noise ordinance almost.
pollution, noise pollution. Yes, it's the same thing.
Mhm.
I guess the question is where else is it
Who
gonna
wants
come
it?
from?
And,
But-
and then the board of trustees at least for be given, I guess better to allow us to give input than not to. I mean, I don't know.
And if it's not something that you want to direct planning staff, it's certainly, it's what we need to work on, through our comp plan. But if this isn't the correct way to do it, that's fine too.
I think it's totally the board of trustees purview. Were you raising one? I'm sorry. Please go ahead. I talked too much.
I wanted to mention there does seem to be some competing objectives here. Because, on one hand, for whatever reason, there has been an effort to light up Main Street.
Yeah.
Without necessarily, addressing dark skies in that array. And then, of course, there's the objective of having darker skies. And then the question of if there were to be, whether it's regulation or even objectives, do they apply equally to the town and to residents and businesses. And, you know, are there exceptions to, you know, carve out certain areas as you want a lot of light for excitement or making it seem more vibrant?
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean,
Or-
there's the kind of competing
point.
objectives.
yeah, that's what I'm trying to say, so that, you know, I think it might be useful to, you know, take another couple steps of trying to understand what the objective is, and is it pervasive, is it cross town, is it everywhere? And should there be a process of sort of review, should it be part of, for example, conditional review? Should it be part of, you know, whenever something is by right, should it be a part of the application or registration of whatever's being done? I think, you know, generally speaking, in the residential areas, people would like to be able to see the stars at night. But then does that then mean that you don't have those strings of light in downtown?
And that also makes me think of, Planet Bluegrass, the parking area,
Oh,
which is
my God.
in Apple Valley. Those lights hit every part of the sky, and I didn't know if they were allowed to. There was no shading of them, so they're blaring, I think, till midnight. When they're out. And is that something that they were given permission to do because it's a,
Yeah, was it only on
Is that only during festivals?
Only during festivals.
Okay, only during festivals.
Winter festivals, they have like these like baseball field lights that go way up and shine all over.
Yes, I had a shot on the
Yeah.
rock cliff as well.
They do, and our house, which is above the rock. And
Yeah, I don't, that's a good question.
Really great.
You know, we did, a whole lot of work last term with Planet Bluegrass and their operational agreement and, you know, I mean, many hours. So I don't recall that being a part of it, but
because nobody really notices unless you're like,
I
one of the
can-
houses up there,
Well, just
you
like,
know.
yeah, you didn't know, someone housing, you
Maybe
didn't
two
know.
houses notice.
Yeah, like I'm across from someone housing, I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
I did, I was like,
Right.
they put the lights in like downtown.
Yeah.
I mean, I know they have to design it, I mean, I think that must have been a developmental review requirement, I was like, I don't think someone thought through this part of the.
It'd be good to
yeah.
be considered it with, you
Yeah,
know,
and that's why I'm
then,
bringing it
like
up.
you
It's
say,
like-
like certain places can have it and some
Yeah,
maybe not.
Cassidy, is there anything you wanted to address from this conversation? I don't want to leave you out.
I mean, I think you're addressing some of it. I've seen some of the, and I don't know if we want to get into the weeds, but I've seen some towns and cities have like different lighting districts, and requirements in those districts. So that might kind of address some of the like residential versus commercial, concerns. And then, yeah, hopefully the project there will get, get through some of the committees and we can see what the results are of that. I do have the commercial design standards up. And so this is part of what we look at. And I guess, based on only going through, since I'm new, I've only gone through one of the processes. A lot of these do seem like suggestions rather than requirements. So I could see how something might get through that might not be preferable to the community, just based on kind of what we're following, but I could be wrong there. Again, having only done one of them.
Cassidy, I'm always interested in how staff chooses their comparisons. How did you choose, you know, like Fort Collins, for instance? Was it random or-
I just chose it because it was one of the cities listed. I read through Boulder's, and theirs is arguably more extensive, and I didn't know if that was more extensive was going to be more
applicable probably.
yeah. So
Yeah.
just kind of looking through them and picking which codes were easy to look at. Yeah. But I can always pull some of the other communities or one of the smaller communities.
I mean, I'm okay. I was just kind of curious what other small towns are doing.
You'll always see Ridgeway in my stuff just because I helped draft that code and at least their comp plan and their community pursuits seem to be very in line with Lions.
Yeah, they're
So-
very small
If I
town.
may though, I think, Cassidy just the previous slide you were on that showed our development review standards. Yeah, so we're basically asking for this with commercial development anyway, we just haven't like formalized it in a sense where it's easily measured. So I think we're actually kind of, I say Lions is actually kind of asking our staff to make sort of a subjective ruling on what lighting is in commercial development. And then if you kind of open that, you know, door, then now you're talking about all zones in town, right? Residential, commercial and everything. So if you're looking for an appetite from, you know, PCDC for staff time spent on this, I would say only the Board of Trustees can tell staff to do anything. But since it's in our design development review guidelines, I do think making that a easier thing for staff to rule on would be to the benefit of staff's time and a good investment. Whether or not it, you know, absorbs residential districts or moves beyond this is, I think, kind of outside of our purview personally, but that's just my one person opinion.
Well, and you had mentioned kind of lighting districts. It might be as easy, and we'd have to look at how it would apply, but the kind of the outdoor activity overlay, you know, we have conversations about noise, but that kind of captures much of our commercial corridor. So it might could be that's where some, you know, lighter standards could live as well. But again, that's no staff research has been done. I can't speak for Cassidy, but I have not looked into how to break that up.
Outdoor entertainment, it's important lines, right? So.
Mhm.
Is it something you wanna get community input on, like
Mhm.
survey?
A business chamber of commerce input.
Okay.
But you know, what's included and not included on that table again, like string lights, but I have them in my backyard, so like, well, I don't
Not
know
allowed.
if that's included, right?
I'm just kidding.
Well, what's funny is they're exempt in Boulder and they're just not covered in the other code. So I think like how far reaching and how specific this kind of ordinance would be is kind of really truly up to us. And so if we make it about lines and look at the comp plan and think about what we are, then I do think we start getting into outdoor entertainment being a special use, and we want to preserve the things that make that special and keep people who live nearby from being, you know, disturbed if we can, if it makes sense, stuff like that. So that's all kind of land use.
Yeah, I can confirm that Teton County string lights were only allowed within a certain time period of the year, and Fort Code Enforcement had to go out every year after, you know,
Christmas.
January 3rd or whatever and
Just
go.
tax revenue, if you bring this much in tax revenue, you can have it like.
But I'm not advocating for that, so.
Hey, they might be onto something.
In
But
your
other
own way.
communities use the string lights to dampen their, you know, their downtown lighting, so.
To use different, as opposed to using stronger lighting, you mean?
Yes,
Some
it's-
lighting without getting a lot.
Opposed to having your traditional tall Main Street lamps, you know, you build these these things, and you see some communities, I haven't ever noticed when I drive through Fort Collins, but I've seen some string lights that actually have little hoods on them. I mean, it's,
Awesome. I mean, it's good, I'm just laughing because it's great.
you know, whoever you are, whatever industry makes that, they're like, I love these towns.
That's gonna cost you.
That's right. You gotta pay for that little plastic hood that goes on top of your bulb, your C7 or whatever it is.
Well, I don't know, just for the sake of time and kind of wrapping this up, is there any other, like, would you guys be concerned with BCDC if staff continued to kind of look into this? I personally am not. but-
I think some, you know, more detailed standards would be great for you guys to use.
Yeah, working on, I know if it's commercial, like I brought up the residential thing, that caught me off guard, and I think I might have got, and I'm not sure if you have, sounds like your commercial design standards, I mean, maybe because higher density residential is usually often adjacent to commercial districts, I don't know, I just, if there's no residential standard, I'm kind of wondering why there was such huge tall street lights kind of there, it didn't seem to make a lot of sense.
I don't recall the details of that development agreement, but it might be worth.
Yeah,
checking out.
it's something to think about in the future, especially too, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, this has been fun.
Yeah.
Should we?
Okay.
Thank you, Cassidy,
More
so
on
much.
Wednesday.
Yeah.
Wednesday will be long.
See, I actually, again, silver lining, it would have been a very long meeting and we would end up taking some of this stuff off, except for farmer's market. I was gonna be seriously dedicated to getting that thing done.
Hopefully it's whatever you like to put on it. Yeah.